Hi everyone, it's Chenzo from RealityArtPod here to give my week 4 player rankings of Big Brother 26. Before I dive in, I put a link in the description so you can catch up on my previous recaps and rankings. These are my rankings for how I feel the players are doing in the game as of the end of the Thursday night episode. Spoiler warning, I will be talking about the 4th eviction. As always, your support is really important to me, so if you like the video, consider liking and subscribing, and I'd love to hear your rankings in the comments. At the time of last week's rankings, I pretty much already knew how this week was going to go, as we've known for like 2 weeks that Quinn would hijack this HOH, and I had a short list of players who could go home. For the first half of the week, my rankings look similar to last week, but as of tonight, I had to completely redo this because so much happened in the last 2 days. Then I had to redo it again after the eviction, so here is my third rewrite of my rankings. Firstly, we lost Cedric here. Had he stayed, I was going to rank him around 8th. He came into this week after a not so clean HOH, having been involved in all the mess with the Guys Alliance and the veto, and didn't make things better for himself by volunteering to go up on the block, really for no reason here, where if he didn't volunteer, it could have been Rubina up initially, or anyone else, but I just feel like it was a dumb move, and as the youngest person in the house, he should be working overtime to be proving he's responsible and has a good head on his shoulders. I personally feel like if someone was so careless with their game, I wouldn't feel comfortable giving them $750,000 in the end, but I think we could see him in the future on another show. In fact, I prefer it. Getting to my actual rankings, in 12th, I have Cam, who was 6th. He's such an invisible house guest, it's insane. He may be doing a better job at the doing nothing strategy than Leah, and I don't think it's on purpose. He keeps out of most of the house happenings, besides the personal drama and anything to do with his smelly feet and nasty socks. I don't have much to say about this guy right now, but his whole game is around the Pentagon and Collective, and those things are pretty done now, so we'll see how he reacts to this, but as of right now, he has no game. He's a strong physical threat that could easily be voted out if he's on the block, and might soon be back with the dogs at the crib. In 11th, I have Brooklyn, who last week was 1st. In one of the biggest falls from grace my rankings have ever seen, she came into this week in the best spot in the house. I still think she's underrated and overhated by most fans, but this week she started things off having voted out a player she was beefing with in Kenny, only to get right into new beef with Angela right away. She didn't even relish in some of the sweet beefless peace. She could have taken the week off and hung out, made good use of the week, but she came up with the idea to backdoor Rubina, and Quinn ran with that, which left Chemo and Tikor feeling left out of the decision-making process, and I think she's now at serious risk in the game, being a founding loyal member of the floundering Pentagon Alliance. With that said, even though her game is rocky right now, she does have relationships in the house and has never really needed to start playing hard and calling in favors. Now that the Pentagon has been blown up, she could either be seen as the head of the snake, or she could have enough social capital and competition ability to save herself. Right now, she's the perfect person to snipe out in a double eviction. In 10th, I have Chelsea, who was 3rd last week. I feel similarly to Brooklyn, as these two seem to work in lockstep, though Chelsea hasn't had a hand in the more negative behaviors, and she seems just to be playing a better game overall than Brooklyn, but they both had their chips all in on the Pentagon, and Chelsea had the 3 Cs, so while she's in a similar position to Brooklyn, she's also similar to Cam in that she doesn't really have a game right now. She just lost her little brother Cedric, which is a huge hit to her game. No more 3 Cs, no more Pentagon, no more Collective, but I do think she could turn it around through her social game. In 9th, I have Mackenzie. Last week was 13th. Where we left off last week, it was pretty guaranteed that she would be an initial nominee. She's a consensus house target, but I don't think the house really cares if she wins a competition to save herself, because they aren't annoyed or threatened by her. She's just always been in a bad spot and isn't really a good player, where I feel like she should, in the last month, have been able to weasel her way in somewhere and bond with somebody, and I just wonder what she's doing with her time in there to get so little done in a month. But also relatable. She's rarely on the feeds, and when she is, she's saying weird stuff like the comments about her brother that got way too much heat from Twitter. She obviously is not sexually attracted to her brother. Y'all are weird for saying that. She won the AI arena, a tough battle against tough competitors when she needed it, so props to her for that. Even though she's been pretty ineffective in the game, the rest of the players do see her as honest, and I think if she can survive this week, she can get herself into a middle position that could be workable if she could recognize the opportunity that's right in front of her. I would even put her a few spots higher if I felt more confidence that she could work this middle position, but maybe she can. In 8th, I have Tucker, who was 11th coming into this week, having isolated himself through using the veto on Angela and making a big scene to expose Quinn's power. This was pretty much a guaranteed ticket to being on the block this week, so on the block he went after Quinn used the power. He then won the veto, and I don't think he ever considers not using it. To him, that would be boring. It's not a question of if he'll use the veto, it's who he'll use it on, which I think could be an interesting twist in the game where not using the veto isn't an option, maybe for the first few weeks, but it is an option here. He even considered offering Mackenzie to pick a number, and if she guessed the right number, he'd save her. Ultimately, he decides to use the veto to save himself, knowing he would be replaced by Rubina. Brendan would have never done this to dear Rachel. He was sure of himself with this move because midweek he was certain that he had the numbers to get Cedric out, but he didn't have the numbers at the time. It seems like he doesn't see the house dynamics that are right in front of him because he knows that he's the house target, but he also thinks he has the numbers. He does work throughout the week to try to get the numbers, and Cedric does get evicted, but I think Chemo and T-Core more made their decision because of the Pentagon situation than to help Tucker. Either way, Cedric leaving is great for Tucker and the army he's trying to build, but I have to put him this low because he's still a big target for the other side of the house. I can't believe this person is this high, but in 7th, I have Angela, who was 12th last week. She came into this week definitely going on the block due to her long-standing rivalry with Quinn. She absolutely demolishes the HOH competition, winning multiple rounds and really showing she has the correct prescription in those glasses. After winning HOH, she prepared to make nominations and held one-on-ones because she thought she was making initial noms. You can't blame her for not knowing what she didn't know, and she really flew under the radar for most of the week. Being safe for the week and not having to get blood on her hands was really great for her game, giving her a week to just float around the house and insert herself into some chit-chat, make herself out to be a helpless anti-type who's begging to be in your alliance. I bumped her up quite a bit because even though Tucker's kind of carrying her, she did invest into that relationship, giving him information, and it's proving to be useful because she's kind of part of Tucker's gang for now, and I think she did a good job convincing Tucker to use the veto on himself because if there was no voice of reason, I think he would have done it, and that keeps him around, and that's great for her game. Also, she didn't even have a vote and can't be linked back to Cedric's eviction, really I think extending Angela's shelf life in the game. In 6th, I have Leah, who was 9th last week. The show doesn't even know what to make of her, where pretty much her only content on the show this week was that she's strategically, purposefully doing nothing in the game and letting the game happen around her. She distanced herself from Mackenzie because they were being seen as a duo. Mackenzie leaving would have been great for her game because it would allow her to continue to be a free agent who people aren't worried about, at least as far as she thinks. What she doesn't know is people are after her, especially Chelsea, who laid the groundwork for the collective targeting Leah soon. And if Quinn wasn't protecting Leah this week, she probably goes on the block in some fashion. She had some productive game conversations, especially one with Rubina, where she showed a lot of awareness about things happening in the game. She wants to keep Rubina around, so people will keep putting up Rubina and Tucker, which keeps her from going on the block, which gave me some signs of hope that Leah has a mind for the game. She helps to flip the house, which is brave, smart gameplay, but since she did vote out Cedric, she could be an easy nominee for, say, Chelsea, who already has been digging Leah's grave this week. She's on her way up, but I can't put her much higher than this. In 5th, I have Quinn, who was 8th last week and came into this week with everyone knowing about his power. He was telling people last week that he didn't want to use it, and maybe if someone in his alliances won HOH, we could have seen him think about it, but he also said he wanted to win the HOH, which would have been so dumb given that you have immunity this week, then can play an HOH again next week. Though if he hijacked his own HOH, would they still let him play again? He didn't really try in the HOH, though he told us that he was trying. He lied to us. He definitely threw it, or he was really bad at it. I've been giving Quinn hell from the start about this power, and now that it's been exposed, it's a pretty big relief on his game. Now that it's been used, I'll also give him some credit for actually getting himself out of the hot water that could have had him coming out of this week a huge house target like Ronnie from Big Brother 11. He uses his HOH to nominate clear targets that help his huge house alliance and a volunteer, and takes revenge on Tucker, who really can't be mad at it after the veto situation last week. He's still on Tucker's hit list, which is not good, and his oversharing started the war between the Visionaries and the Pentagon. That was messy, but I think the players in both of those alliances will still want Quinn's allyship. He's a hard player to rank because he continues to play terribly and make terrible decisions and overshare. He keeps making it work out for himself, and despite his pawn going home, he was planning on turning on Cedric at some point anyway. If he ends up on the block this week, he probably does have the numbers to stay and the bonds to keep him, and I could see him lasting for a few more weeks, but they would be dumb to let him get to the end, but these house guests are kind of dumb. In 4th, I'm putting Rubina, who last week was 10th. Last week, I said that Rubina had chained herself to Tucker as an anchor, and I largely feel that's held up. She wasn't an initial nomination and spent a good portion of the week complaining to a rotation of house guests about her relationship with Tucker. Then Brooklyn concocted a plan to use Rubina as bait to play with Tucker, which leads to Rubina being the replacement nominee. What she has going for her is she's a great person and people want to keep her around just for being herself, especially T-Core and Chemo, who never wanted her on the block in the first place. It's a testament to her that there was a real effort to keep her around, though her campaigning is largely still a lot of personal, not a lot of game. Now that she stayed, I think the house guests were really regretful of putting her in the situation, which they'll remember, and the people who voted her out will feel bad and want to make it up to her. I think she can still make it far, but Tucker needs to go soon for her to avoid this situation happening again. In third, I have Chemo, who last week was fourth. He starts this week off in a perfectly fine spot, kind of just hangs out throughout the week with T-Core, griping about how they were annoyed about what was happening, not really talking about plans, but eventually on Wednesday they held meetings all day that they called one-on-ones, but they were really two-on-ones. Everyone in the house thought this was amusing, but when the Pentagon finds out those meetings were really plotting against them, they're not going to be happy. I like that they were thinking strategically and trying to protect Robina, but I feel like they could have made their decision about this vote sooner and then planned around it instead of making a decision that last minute. In second, I'm putting T-Core. She was second last week. I keep saying that I want to put her in first, but like I said, I think the way they went about this game move, which was a successful game move, was really sketchy. What with them lying to everyone all week and turning on some of the strongest players in the house, when they could have continued to play all sides and just gone to their allies before the eviction and told them they were flipping instead of completely blindsiding people. But she and Chemo are both in the majority that they created, but they potentially made vendettas with some really strong players who won't forget this. In first, I'm putting Joseph, who last week was fifth. I know this is wild, but hear me out. He came into this week holding together the Collective Alliance. He was Mr. Collective, building his strong relationships with Leah, Mackenzie, Quinn, the Collective, Tucker. Then T-Core and Chemo approach him right before the vote, and he knows that he needs to be in the majority. He tells them, if you have the votes, I'm changing my vote. So he was flexible enough to go against the Collective. In doing so, he builds bonds and is safe if Tucker's side wins HOH. And he's the lowest offender if the remaining Pentagons win HOH and want revenge. He's playing the whole house from the shadows right now, playing the game that Quinn wishes he was playing, and none of them are onto him. And those are my rankings for week 4. If you agree or disagree, let me know in the comments. Our rankings aren't going to be identical. I'd love to read yours. I always read them and respond, even when you call me a twit. If you like the content, consider liking and subscribing. Your support means a lot to me. I'll be back on Wednesday to talk Challenge 40, and of course on Thursday to talk about Big Brother 26. Until next time, have a nice weekend. Bye.